jungle.
Hello, you are listening to Trump Republic Radio. It is Sunday, February 11th, 2018. I am your co-host, Bobby Hester, and I am joined by my host, Enzo Quesada.
Hello.
And Enzo, maybe you should describe the situation that you're in right now just before we get started so everyone goes ahead and knows what's going on here.
So, yeah, me and Bobby aren't in the same room today like we have been for, I don't know, the last at least 4 or 5 months, because I'm currently in Plano. I'm working on the Philip Huffines for Texas Senate campaign. I've been block walking every single day, except for today. I get a day off because my numbers have been good. But I'm going to be continuing to do that until the March 6th primary date. So yeah, for the foreseeable future, I'm just going to be calling in to do the show, but I'm still going to be doing the show.
Yeah, so
excited to be doing this.
Yeah, so we're going to be doing this over Skype here, so hopefully the call quality is very good and whatnot. But that being said, before we also start, I do want to mention that we have started our primaries overview show that we said we were going to do. You can find those. We are not going to be releasing those on the RSS feed as podcasts. We are actually going to be releasing those as videos on YouTube because we have some we have some visuals that go along with the audio. So those are being made. We did Texas this week, and in 2 weeks we'll be doing Illinois and Puerto Rico. So if you want to watch those and be an informed voter, check out our YouTube channel. The link is in the description of this episode below. But I guess with that being said, we should probably go ahead and get started with the show then, shouldn't we?
Yeah, we got a lot of stuff to get into.
Okay, so the first things first, let me bring up one thing real quick. First things first, we want to talk about the second government shutdown, don't we?
We do.
So
this shutdown only lasted a couple hours.
It lasted less than 6 hours in total. But yeah, there was a second government shutdown. It lasted 6 hours and very uneventful. In fact, if you quite literally could have gone to sleep and missed it.
I did sleep through it myself.
Yeah, I stayed up late that day, and I knew it had gotten shut down. And by the time you woke up in the morning, the thing was back up, and Trump had already signed the new bill that they passed to fund the government. So that's some pretty interesting news that happened right there. Very uneventful, but I think we had something like 70 or so people that voted to reopen the government this time. So it was very similar to the last time, except last time there was a government shutdown a few weeks ago. There was the whole DACA situation was pretty much the reason why it shut down. This time, it actually shut down for a slightly different reason, and that really had to do with just government spending. In fact, Senator Rand Paul, he was out there on the Senate floor talking for several hours, kind of holding up a vote, really. And he was essentially complaining that there was just way too much government spending in the bill that they had put forward, and he thought that government spending shouldn't be there. He thought it added too much to the deficit, and I actually happen to agree with him. There was a lot of pork barrel spending in this bill that they passed. Granted, it does fund the government essentially for another 2 years, so we probably won't have to deal with any more shutdowns for at least the foreseeable future. But yeah.
Which they haven't had a continuing resolution last this long in a very long time. Not that we've even passed a budget in over a decade now, but it is interesting that the Democrats don't want to deal with this anymore. They've given up all leverage that they have on this stack of stuff. You know, they've only had leverage through government shutdowns, but now they've completely dissolved themselves with that ability. So, you know, come the March 5th deadline, it seems like they have nothing to stop us from just letting the thing expire.
Yeah, and even if there was some sort of DACA bill that they would try to get passed. I know that I think it was either Paul Ryan or Mitch McConnell agreed to at least let a bill come to a floor vote. I believe that was Mitch McConnell
It's
who had
Mitch
said that.
McConnell.
Yeah. So, I mean, that doesn't really change our position on anything because in order for something to get a floor vote, it's got to at least go through committee first. And if you have something like the bill that John McCain tried to introduce this week, which was essentially blanket amnesty, which had like no money for the wall, no additional border security, it was essentially blanket amnesty. Something like that's not going to get through committee, and there's no way Mitch McConnell's ever going to let that come to a floor vote. So in terms of that regards, that's okay. And even so, if you tried to get something passed in the Senate, you pretty much need, 60 votes unless you went nuclear on the thing to try to get it down to 50. And even then, Mitch McConnell is not going to allow a bad bill that hurts Republicans or is not, the agenda that we are trying to push. He's not going to allow something like that to pass if it's going to be, detrimental to what's trying to be done here. Meaning that if you don't have 60 votes, it's not going to pass. He's only going to put something up that can pass, and there's no way that blanket amnesty is going to be in there at all. And so in that regard, we're looking really good in terms of the DACA situation or any type of bills. And even if you somehow got something passed in the Senate, it's going to be extremely hard to pass that in the House. So it's extremely unlikely that there's going to be any sort of compromise on DACA, and that March 5th deadline is now less than a month away. I mean, we're looking at, about 3 weeks or so until it hits?
Yeah.
Yeah, and so even then, Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton, he even said that, he's going to be leading the charge against DACA in the courts. So right now, I know the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals struck down Trump's striking down of DACA, meaning that technically DACA is still going on right now. But again, that's kind of what we've been talking about, these left-wing judges that are just out of control. But even then, if it goes to the Supreme Court, it's probably going to side on our side. And even then, the Trump administration said that if DACA is challenged in the courts, they're really not going to defend it at all. Meaning that, that lawsuit that Ken Paxton and a couple of other states, Texas and a couple of other states are putting forward, it would essentially, they'd win that case, meaning that come March 5th, DACA is dead.
Yes.
But, we have some other stuff that came out of the government shutdown, and that was Nancy Pelosi giving a little speech.
That's what I want to bring up.
Yeah, giving a little speech on the House floor there.
Now, technically, you can't filibuster out of the House, but she did talk for, I believe it was 9 hours, or just about 9 hours, in defense of Dreamers. And I don't know, obviously I didn't listen to the whole thing, but it was a very humorous spectacle. Did you hear her little quote on her grandson, Bobby?
Yeah, saying like her grandson has a bunch of friends who have beautiful darker skin and beautiful dark eyes, and how her son resents the fact that he's white and wants to be like them. It was very appalling to watch and listen. I actually, I'd heard of that clip that she had said. I didn't listen to it until this morning before we were doing the show here, and it was very disturbing.
It was strange, yeah. She's talking about her grandson has this little Guatemalan friend named Antonio. And for her grandson's birthday, her grandson said that he wanted brown skin and brown eyes like his friend Antonio. And she went on to just talk about how beautiful tan skin is and, brown eyes are. And it's just like, there's so much like toxic self-hatred for them being white people. It's really strange. And like, of all times to talk about it, you're doing this big grandiose speech that you're giving, but I don't know, I guess she needed a reason to fill 9 hours worth of stuff with verbiage, so throw that story in for some reason.
Yeah, and the thing is, like you said earlier, it technically was not a filibuster because you can't filibuster in the House. However, party leaders, like majority leaders and minority leaders, are given time to speak, and they're essentially given as much time as they want whenever they're discussing things. So that's how she was able to do that for 9 hours. If it was just a regular congressman, I doubt they would have been able to do that.
Yeah, but with her speech going on for the length it did, in the end, it doesn't mean anything whatsoever. The government's been funded till 2020, and I don't know, nothing really came of this shutdown.
No, it didn't. In fact, if anything that came from the shutdown was just more crying from the left. We talked about how the first shutdown was so good for our side, and they tried to spin it like it was Trump's shutdown, but even that didn't go very well for them. Public opinion was not on their side of that aisle, outside of a few cat ladies and communists on Twitter. But in terms of this shutdown, I think the fact that it was so short. I mean, they said it was the shortest shutdown in history of government shutdowns here in the U.S. So you're absolutely right. In the end, it didn't change a single thing. Nothing is different, and we're back to where we were. We have control. We funded the government through 2020. Granted, there is a lot of deficit spending in there and a lot of pork barrel spending as well, which I am not pleased about at all. But if that's what it takes to completely make these people lose their minds and get nothing that they want, because what they essentially want is, as we said, amnesty for DACA and trying to bring as many people into the U.S. that can become their new voting base as possible. But for right now, they've got nothing, and we've got everything. We've got all the cards, and we're playing our hand perfectly.
Yeah.
So,
do you want to go now on to some of the new memo stuff that's happened this week? There's tons of stuff. It's hard to even keep track of what's going on with the Russia stuff.
Yeah, so we've got like 4 or 5 different stories that all kind of go together here. So I guess we can just go through these here real quick. So the first thing that we have up is there's some new Strzok page texts that show Obama wanted to know what they were doing. Newly revealed text messages between former FBI lovers Peter Strzok and Lisa Page include an exchange discussing talking points that then FBI Director James Comey was giving to President Obama, who apparently, quote, wanted to know everything we're doing. The text was sent from Page to Strzok on September 2nd, 2016, saying, quote, POTUS wants to know everything we're doing. And this raises an issue about Obama's personal involvement in the Clinton email investigation, because Obama is on record saying that he did not get involved in FBI investigations, but these texts reveal he possibly might have been lying about that.
Yeah. And also we know now that Obama used like a pseudonym,
An alias.
as far as communication. Yeah, an alias as far as communication goes. So we don't know if Obama was receiving information from these operatives who are looking into the Clinton email investigation.
Yeah, and
so these people have further incriminated themselves, and I mean, at some point, heads need to roll.
Yeah, and there was one text, we didn't cover this on the show last week, but I read it. There was one text where it was either Strzok or Page, one of them was saying to the other that we should stop referring to President Obama as, the president, instead refer to him as like a senior White House official or something like that, which is funny because ever since that text came out, people went up and they looked up different articles from back in like 2016 and stuff, and they looked up the term senior White House official. And there were multiple of those that if you substituted that for Obama, those, articles and whatnot that people are writing really brings into question what was actually going on. Really shady business that was happening. So, it's not to say that every single time that they used the word senior government official, they were referring to President Obama. But if they were some of those times, then there's a lot more that's not being said. And we've only reached the tip of the iceberg with, what these people were actually doing, in terms of what we found out through these text messages.
And President Obama isn't afforded insight into the investigation into Clinton whatsoever.
No.
So,
but But the second thing that we have, sorry.
No, continue.
Okay, I was going to say the second story that we have up here is there's a new memo out, this time written by Senator Chuck Grassley from Iowa. He released a memo detailing the allegations that associates of the Clinton campaign had been supplying information to former British spy Christopher Steele, who is the author of the Trump-Russia Pissgate dossier that was used to justify surveillance on the Trump campaign officials during the election. So he essentially wrote his own memo that was talking about how the Clinton campaign was giving information, and in order to kind of understand what he means by that memo, we have to talk about this other story, and that's the fact that there was a second Steele dossier that was released. I'll go ahead and read this one here. So, the Senate Judiciary Committee released a heavily redacted document that confirms the existence of a second anti-Trump dossier that relied on information from Russia's FSB. The document, authored by Senator Chuck Grassley from Iowa and Senator Lindsey Graham from South Carolina, both Republicans, is an unclassified version of the January 4th criminal referral to the DOJ targeting former British spy Christopher Steele. The second dossier was given from Clinton campaign associate Cody Shearer to officials in the Obama State Department. After this, however, it was then given to Christopher Steele. It's also reported that Shearer was in contact with Steele about anti-Trump research, and the Obama State Department official Jonathan Weiner was a connection between Steele and the State Department during the 2016 campaign. So, to go back to the Chuck Grassley memo that was written, you have to understand that what his memo is saying is that people in the Clinton campaign, Cody Shearer, this associate here, he was talking to officials in the State Department and relaying information through the State Department to Christopher Steele. Meaning that Obama's State Department under John Kerry was completely complicit in this whole, DNC scandal of Fusion GPS and whatnot. Essentially, they were in on it too, or at least some officials, this Jonathan Weiner guy, was in on it as well. And if there are members in the State Department of the government, not just, the Clinton campaign and the DNC, but actual government officials that were involved in this too, again, we've just reached the tip of the iceberg, and it's just going deeper and deeper underwater the more information that we find out.
So, I guess it's important to try to paint the picture and what's been going on and what we've figured out. So, what's happened is they used Fusion GPS receives payments from the Clinton campaign to have Christopher Steele commission this dossier. The dossier, which, as Pissgate or whatever. They use this dossier to get FISA warrants on Carter Page, who is Trump's foreign policy advisor. Now, when you get a FISA warrant, you need to disclose a lot of information. It's something that can't be taken lightly. And what they didn't do in the FISA warrant is they didn't disclose Christopher Steele's connection to the DNC at all.
Or his anti-Trump bias.
Yeah, which is outspoken. This is on the record. He says he wanted to take Donald Trump down. Now, another crazy thing about this FISA warrant is every single time you renew this warrant, which this warrant was renewed many times over, and it was approved by James Comey, Rod Rosenstein, Andrew McCabe, you need to relay back new information that you've gotten from your surveillance to justify your FISA warrant to be renewed. But as far as are concerned, I mean, we don't have the applications in front of us. This wasn't happening. So the real question is, who were the judges that were authorizing this warrant that cited Christopher Steele, citing himself,
right,
as evidence of, the need to surveil Carter Page? And, with the ability to surveil Carter Page, they're also available to surveil anyone that he was in contact with. So they used the warrant that they acquired as means to blanket wiretap campaign all the way through up to the election date.
And even past the election day too.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, the story just keeps getting deeper and deeper, and it seems that, that story that you just told, every single week we have to add an extra sentence or two to it to kind of describe exactly what was going on. But Christopher Steele himself, he kind of got in a little bit of trouble this week because he no-shored a court case. Christopher Steele, the former MI6 agent and author of the infamous Trump-Russia Pissgate dossier, as we've said, was a no-show on Monday for a long-requested disposition in a London court. This comes after Chuck Grassley and Lindsey Graham announced that criminal referral of Steele that we talked about just a second ago. But they said that congressional testimony and ongoing reporting revealed that Steele was paid $168,000 by Fusion GPS to write and promote the dossier when it was opposition research funded in part by the DNC. So essentially what was going on here is, the British government, they know that this guy is up to no good as well, and they were calling him in order to get his disposition on what was going on, and he just didn't show up to a court case. So that's,
and I wouldn't be surprised if they never see this guy again, because it seems pretty blatant what this guy was doing at this point. And the really scary thing is, if Hillary Clinton had won the presidency, none of this stuff would have been figured out.
None of this.
Not only would have none of this stuff be exposed, it would have been increased tenfold, because it would have showed that there's no corruption in not that there's no corruption, but that they can get away with this kind of stuff. So really crazy stuff. I'd never expect to see Christopher Steele land in U.S. soil again in his lifetime, and I don't know. They're going to track this guy down.
They're going to track this guy down. So, if I had to give him any advice, I would say run and hide, my friend. Run and hide. So we have another story up here that's kind of related to this whole matter, and that's the number 3 official at the DOJ is stepping down. Rachel Brand, the number 3 official at the Justice Department, is stepping down after 9 months on the job. She served as next in line behind Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein. This comes just a week after Deputy FBI Director Andrew McCabe announced his intention to step down and fully retire in mid-March. As the number 3, she oversaw several divisions of the DOJ, including leading the department's effort to extend a law that authorizes the NSA's warrantless wiretapping surveillance program. Her assistant, Curie Gunn, also left the department. So what we have is the number 3 in line of the DOJ behind Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein and Attorney General Jeff Sessions. She's now stepping down, and she didn't really give any reason as to why she was stepping down, but just the timing of everything, especially with Andrew McCabe announcing that he was going to step down last week, you got to know that it makes you really wonder, is she involved in this at all? Because we know that McCabe was involved because he was the one who gave permission to extend one of the FISA applications, or he signed off on one of the FISA applications. I don't know if this lady signed off on anything, but the fact that she is such a high level at the DOJ, stepping down right now for, whatever reason she's doing, it's very suspect.
Yeah. So, I guess that's the update on how all these dossiers and memo stuff is going out this week. The media has downplayed this stuff a lot, especially the Chuck Grassley memo, because it refutes the memo that Adam Schiff, came out and presented, the refutation of the initial Nunes memo.
Yeah, we never even talked about the Schiff memo.
Yeah, these people, they got a lot of dirt on their face, and I don't know, they're really outmaneuvered, they're really exposed, and I wouldn't want to be in their situation.
Before we go to the next story, I do want to hit on the Adam Schiff memo for just a second. So, Congressman Adam Schiff from California, he decided to write his own memo in response to the Nunes memo. Except what Schiff did was he intentionally put a lot of classified information into the memo, meaning that when they went to go, seek its release, they had to redact a lot of that information from it because it was classified, and in doing so, that gave him the ability to claim that, the Trump administration is, they're not being transparent, they're trying to hide the truth from getting out. They'll let the Republican memo out, but they won't let my memo out. When the entire time he did it on purpose just so he could be able to do that. The guy is a dirty, sleazy liar and doesn't deserve to hold office, but I digress. It's just more political pandering and maneuvering for these people. And, frankly, I'm very happy that Adam Schiff is angry because we're winning and he's losing.
Yeah, and anyone that's following this stuff closely at all knows what Adam Schiff is doing in it, and that there's no way that President Trump could accept such a memo to be released.
No, of course not.
So they're sending it back, and he's got to file the right forms to do so. Yeah,
and it's funny because, we talk about how the House voted essentially to release the Nunes memo. They voted to release the Adam Schiff's memo as well, but the problem is that it was so filled with that classified information that they had to redact it. once they take it out, they have no problem releasing it, because any information in it that could try to make our side look bad, we'd be able to prove it wrong, or at least we'd be able to back it up.
Yeah.
Because we are able to back up everything that was in the Nunez memo. The FBI said that there was nothing in there that they could refute. Whereas, what are you supposed to be able to do with a guy who's trying to dispute that? Well, you have to attack the viewpoints or anything that he says. And if he says anything at all in his memo that can be proven false, which, given the information that we have from other sources and other documents, we know essentially what is true and what is not true at this point. Anything that he puts in there that's false only damages his credibility even further.
Yeah.
So
you want to move on to some military parade stuff?
Yeah. Do you want me to go ahead and read these since you're on over there?
I can read them too.
Okay. I'll let you go ahead and read this one then.
Okay. Trump orders military celebration. President Trump has ordered the Pentagon to plan a military celebration in Washington, D.C. to show appreciation to U.S. forces. White House Press Secretary Sarah Sanders confirmed on Tuesday that Trump requested such an event. Quote, President Trump is incredibly supportive of America's great service members who risk their lives every day to keep our country safe. He has asked the Department of Defense to explore a celebration at which all Americans can show their appreciation, Sanders said. Trump ordered the parade after he saw France's Bastille Day parade in June, when French President Macron had Trump as a guest of honor. The last time a military parade marched through Washington, D.C. was at the conclusion of the Gulf War in June of 1991.
So, this has kind of been a controversy this week, the fact that Trump ordered the military celebration. People have said that Trump did, as you said, Press Secretary Sanders did confirm that Trump requested it. I think the White House has kind of released a statement saying that, they're not necessarily denying that they said this, but they're trying to kind of downplay the fact that they're actually doing it, which is funny because, as I said, it's a huge controversy. I mean, everybody who hates Trump is completely up in arms about this. They hate the fact that there's going to be a military parade. Yeah. I mean, like we said, the last time there was one was 1991. Neither you nor me were alive at that time. I would love to see a military parade here in the U.S., and, the fact that Trump said that he ordered it after France's Bastille Day parade in June, I personally think we should be having military parades in the U.S. every year, maybe every couple of years, at least, once every 4 years, so every president gets to see one. I would like to see that as a new tradition that starts. But, the thing is, as we said, liberals are completely up in arms about this. In fact, they're up in arms to the point of their own stupidity, because liberals are now planning to lay down in front of the tanks. So, hysterical liberal Arne Manconi started a movement online to try and lay down in the road in front of tanks in Trump's military parade, if Trump's military parade actually occurs. So, Manconi, in a Facebook video, said, quote, "We would go to Washington, D.C. if such a crazy and insane act occurred, and we would lay down in front of the tanks just like the heroes and the courageous students did in China in 1989. The only problems are, number one, students did not lie down in front of tanks in Tiananmen Square in 1989. Only one person stood, and that guy, if you don't know, he was never heard from again. And number two, protesters were actually fighting against the oppressive communist government at that time, and they were having their rights violated. So, if anyone wants to go and look up the Tiananmen Square massacre, go ahead and do that if you don't already know about that, and you'll find out exactly what happened over there. But to try to compare Trump's idea of a military parade to what happened over there is complete, absurd and stupid as far as I'm concerned. I mean, you're dealing with people that view any sort of strong military presence as just like this dictatorship and whatnot. I find it completely absurd personally.
Yeah. Like the funny thing for me is just,
your audio's breaking up.
It's all totalitarian dictators. I'm sorry. Am I good now?
Yeah, you're good.
Okay, so for me, the weird thing is just they're all saying, oh, it's totalitarian dictators that do military parades. Look at what they do in North Korea, or look at what they do in Russia or Iran. But it's just like the influence for him, where he got the idea to do this, is from France, our ally. I
Yeah.
don't think anyone would consider Emmanuel Macron to be a raging dictator. And I don't know, with the amount of money that we give to the armed forces, which I think is too much budget money that we give them, I mean, this isn't going to cost them that much to do the parade. It just sounds fun to me. So, I mean, I want to see it.
Yeah,
If it makes it all, mad, I mean, that's cool too.
yeah, I read somewhere that it would only cost like, $7 or $8 million. I'm not sure where I read that, but if you're talking about like the size of the U.S. budget and how much money we spend, $7 to $8 million for a military parade, hell, you could sell tickets and raise more money than that.
And it seems like something that'd be, memorable for everyone that's involved.
Yeah,
not just the
imagine.
service.
I was gonna say, imagine
to
if you
watch.
decided to do it on like July 4th or something like that. Just like, or maybe on like Veterans Day or Memorial Day or something like that. Just have a big military parade. I'd like to see it on July 4th. That would be cool. I'm looking at this from the aspect of like, as a person who wants to view it as like a civilian rather than someone who's going to actually be in it or someone who's planning it. If they decided to sell tickets to this thing, I would buy tickets to go see it. I mean, granted, it's something they probably want to be free to the public, but if you're talking about something that's less than $10 million to spend in order to do this, I think the PR standpoint from it alone is fantastic. And and as we see more polarization of America, of course, no one on the left is going to like it. But if you're a regular, everyday American and you hear, oh, there's going to be a military parade, you want to watch it on TV? I think a lot of people would tune in to watch that. I mean, I certainly would.
Yeah.
Now,
No. I don't think
Sorry.
it's as egregious as they make it out to be.
No, and the only problem, though, to kind of counter what I just said, is the fact that, while that might only cost $10 or so million to do, the Pentagon just got caught losing $800 million. So an internal audit of the Pentagon's Defense Logistics Agency, or DLA, found more than $800 million in spending that is unaccounted for in DLA records. The major accounting firm Ernst & Young found $465 million worth of construction projects from fiscal year 2016 was missing, and an additional $384 million for, quote, in-progress construction projects lacked sufficient documentation. Quote, if you can't follow the money, you aren't going to be able to do an audit, said Senator Chuck Grassley from Iowa, one of the champions of the DoD audit. DLA Director Lieutenant General Darrell Williams issued a statement in response to the audit findings, in which he said that the audit has, quote, provided us with a valuable independent view of our current financial operations. We are committed to resolving the material weakness and strengthening internal controls around DLA's operations. At the end of 2017, the first ever audit of the DoD in its 70-year history began, with 2,400 auditors being given the task of inspecting the agency. So, granted, a military parade might only cost $10 or so million. The Pentagon not being able to account for $800 million over just the last couple of years is astounding. And I'm surprised at the fact that they haven't even had an audit of the DoD in its 70-year history. I mean, every company in the U.S. has to be audited every year, every other year or so. But the fact that, the largest department of the government, the Department of Defense, which, has budgets of billions and billions of dollars a year, essentially can't find $800 million from their records? Like, who the hell is running this thing? What type of records are you people keeping? If a single company was being audited, and then the auditors came back and they said that we can't find $800 million that you essentially say that you have on your books here, it's unaccounted for spending, that company, their stock would tank. No one would want to invest in their company, and those auditors would have the hardest job in history. I mean, how do you not audit a government department in 70 years? You should be auditing every government department every year, frankly. If you want to run the government like a business, and that's just the DoD. How many more government departments aren't being audited, or might be audited every once in a while? How many more millions of dollars in spending are you unaccounted for? I mean, we talk about all the time about how much government waste there is in budgets and stuff, but if this is just one audit and you found this already, I mean, we talked about how when Trump first came into office last year, Ben Carson, when he started HUD, he found out there was like $500 billion worth of spending that they didn't need to have, or wasteful spending in HUD. So we're talking about upwards of possibly billions and billions of dollars that's spent using government spending, using your taxpayer dollars, that's completely unaccounted for when these audits actually begin. And so I'm so happy that we're finally doing this because, granted, it's too little too late, but if you can fix this, imagine how much better this country would be if those records were actually kept correctly, if places spent the money the way that they're supposed to be spending it, if you could actually account for every dollar the way you're supposed to be accounted for. Because otherwise, it's just wasted money, and frankly, why are we paying our tax money to people that can't account for $800 fucking million in the goddamn fucking audit?
Yeah,
I mean, I'm kind of going off here because I'm an accountant, and I do, I'm auditing is going to be my future for the next 20 plus years. So this stuff hits home to me.
Yeah, the thing is, the problem, it starts with we just give the Pentagon too much money to begin with. Like, part of this continuing resolution that they just signed so we could get out of the government shutdown, gives even more money to these people. They don't feel a need to be responsible for this money if we can continue to just throw more and more money at them. Okay, if they're not responsible with it, I mean, they shouldn't be trusted with it to begin with. But the Pentagon's a monster of a government institution that does what it wants, and auditing auditing the Defense Department has been long overdue. So hopefully they find even more, because this is just stuff that they've initially found beginning their audit.
Yeah, and like I said, the audit began at the end of 2017, and that's the first time in the DoD's 70-year history that they've been doing this. So, like I said before, who knows how many more government departments aren't being audited or haven't been audited in a long time. And if it took 2,400 auditors to audit the DoD, imagine how many auditors that would take to audit, other government departments as well. Like I said, frankly, I think this is something that should be done every year, and I hope Trump, or at least, people in the Trump administration are paying attention and realize this is something that's, we talk a lot about different government problems. Imagine how much lower the national debt or the deficit would be if you were able to account for all this money that's being spent where you don't know where it's at, and if you're able to adjust your spending levels to get rid of that sort of stuff. I think we'd be moving towards a lot more fiscal responsibility for our government, and it truly would actually make America great again.
Yes. Let's move on to our last story that we have at the top of the stack here, and that is in regards to an FBI informant speaking about the Hillary-Russia connection.
Do you want to read this one, or do you want me to? All right, go ahead.
I'll read it, yeah. A FBI informant, Douglas Campbell, testified before staff from both parties on the Senate Judiciary, House Intelligence, and House Oversight and Government Reform Committees that Moscow routed millions to America with the expectation it would benefit Bill Clinton's charitable efforts as then Secretary of State Hillary Clinton pushed through a reset in U.S.-Russia relations, the Hill reported. Russian nuclear executives told him Moscow hired American lobbying firm APCO worldwide because it would influence the Obama administration and specifically Hillary Clinton. Campbell testified that Russian nuclear officials, quote, told me at various times that they expected APCO to apply a portion of the $3 million annual lobbying fee it was receiving from the Russians to provide in-kind support for the Clintons' global initiative. The contract called for 4 payments of $750,000 over 12 months. APCO was expecting to give assistance free of charge to the Clinton Global Initiative as part of their effort to create a favorable environment to ensure the Obama administration made affirmative decisions on everything from Uranium One to the U.S.-Russia civilian nuclear cooperative agreement. So what this is all saying is, the left always wants to point at Trump having this egregious connection to Russia and Russian oligarchs and this and that, when Trump didn't have one whatsoever, and Hillary Clinton had a very glaring connection to Russian oligarchs in regards to American uranium, as we know through what has happened with Uranium One, selling off large portions of Americans' uranium assets to Russians. And I'm not a Russophobe. I don't think that's a terrible thing. But, for the people that are, you think they would take issue with their own doing so.
You would think, but when it comes to these people, there is no accountability or anything like that.
Yeah.
So yeah,
just I just wanted to comment on, and it's part of this grander Russian collusion narrative when, really all signs don't point to Donald Trump at all on these things.
In fact, exactly the opposite. They always say that if you see what the left is projecting, saying that they're doing the exact same thing but 10 times worse. That's kind of a meme that's pushed around on the internet, but in reality, it almost is true a lot of times. They talk about, Trump's Russian connections, blah, 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 when in fact, it's the Hillary Clinton campaign that's over there, receiving, $750,000 for payments of that? So we're talking about, roughly $3 million over the course of a year in order to benefit Bill Clinton's charitable efforts to benefit U.S.-Russia relations via stuff like Uranium One and other stuff like that. It's as I said before, it's absurd, it's insane, and it's not going to get better for these people because it seems like something like this, little tidbits, little stories are coming out every single day, and the more we find out, the better it's going to be for us because, frankly, I should just say it, these people, at some point, handcuffs are going to start be putting on people, and there's going to be some charges coming at some point.
Yeah. So let's get into the economy portion of the show. There's a lot of stuff to get into this week. And we got to start off with what's been happening with the stock market.
Yeah, we've had quite the wild ride this week in the stock market. In fact, they said that if you add up all the ups and downs that the Dow Jones has done, it's had a total of 20,000 points in changes via going up and down and whatnot through the course of this week. So, first things first, the Dow Jones on Monday fell 1,175 points in its largest single-day decline in history, closing at 24,346. This comes after the Dow fell 666 points last Friday. Overall, the Dow has dropped enough to erase January 2018's gains and has entered correction territory. Stocks rebounded on Tuesday, opening down around 500 points and closing up 567 at 24,913. Now, through the rest of the week, it did continue to go down and up. I know this Friday it ended up about 300, and I think one day it was down like 50 or up 50, and another day I think it went down 1,000 again. So we've had quite the wild week for the stock market. But there's a quote here that we have that says, quote, "What we noticed in January was that stocks and bond yields wanted to run through their year-end targets to start off 2018, said John Augustine, Chief Investment Officer at Huntington Private Bank. Quote, I think both markets just need to take a breather. He also noted these pullbacks in bonds and stocks should be viewed as buying opportunities by investors. Of note is that while many point to this as a stock market crash and blame President Trump for it, is that the Dow has risen over 40% from Election Day, meaning that it would have to decline another roughly 5,000 to 6,000 points in order to erase all the gains that were made during Trump's historic rally. Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin said, quote, I think you've seen a normal market correction, although large. There's just a disconnect in the short term. Markets move in both directions. Now, when it comes to the stock market having this wild week that it just had, you kind of have to also put things in perspective. That we just got recent information about some unemployment numbers and whatnot at the end of last week. And if you got to remember, what the market does is it reacts to things not in the past, but it reacts to things in the future. So because of the fact that we got those some unemployment numbers, or it might have been unemployment benefit numbers, one of the two. Those came out at the end of last week. What those told us is that essentially the economy is doing much, much better than people think it is. As good as, we do think it is, it's a lot better. That I think it's like a 45-year low in unemployment claims. And what essentially people are reacting to is because that information came out, that's going to factor into the Federal Reserve's decision to raise interest rates. And every time there's good news like this, that means that they're probably going to raise it. So what the market was reacting to is reacting to the idea that reacting to the idea that the Federal Reserve is probably going to raise interest rates higher than what they expect them to actually raise them right now. Now, because of that, that's what's causing the market to go down. Now, it also goes up because people view this as a buying opportunity, and then there's kind of speculation, and whenever there's a big sell-off, people tend to be like, oh crap, the thing's tanking, I might as well sell and make my profits now. Other people realize, oh, it just went down, I'm going to buy it. That's why you see it going down, 1,000 points one day, up 300 the next day, down 1,000 the next day, being flat for a couple days, then going up again. It's turbulence, and I think, a lot of people have been talking about how, is the market in a bubble right now? Is it too high? And as I've said before, I do not believe that the stock market is going to completely crash in terms of, wiping out tons and tons and tons of gains. The economy is doing extremely well right now, so there's no way that you can say that, we're headed for a recession, at least not anytime soon. All the indicators that you normally see for recessions that tend to be like, several months out from recessions, none of those are indicative. The only thing that indicates that the stock market should go down is the fact that it's gone up so much. And that's why people, they're not talking about a stock market crash or a recession anymore. What they're referring to is just a correction, saying, I just think that the market's kind of gotten a little ahead of itself, it's overvalued, and it needs to come down a little bit. And that's exactly what happened here. I mean, if you remember back to 1980, I forget what year it was, 87, I believe, when the stock market went down like 20% in one day. And then if you remember back in 2001, the market crashed a little bit. 2008, the market crashed again. Obviously, 2008 market crash being, the worst of all those since the Great Depression. But every single time you have one of those, people freak out and they panic. Nobody's freaking out and panicking right now because people actually understand this is not a stock market crash. This is not indicative of Trump doing something bad. What this simply is saying that the stock market has gotten a little ahead of itself. It needs to come down a little bit so it can get back to where it should be, which is probably around 23,000 or so, if I had to guess. We're not too far off from there. So I think that maybe, 22,000 at the lowest. If it gets back down to that way, it'll probably go down a little bit this week. This week it went down a little bit more, so don't be surprised if for the next week or so it continues to drop. I think that the craziness of all these giant swings that's been happening recently, I think that'll start to taper off a little bit as people start to, come back to their rational thinking here instead of just reacting to these ups and downs personally.
And with all massive rises that you see in the stock market, eventually there will be a correction. This is not something that they never anticipated happening.
Right.
With all these gains that they've seen since Donald Trump was elected. So, yeah. The media is hyping this up as, it's the end of the world, we're heading into recession, but that's not happening right now.
No. And, kind of segueing to the next story, as we've talked about, we've been covering all these different companies that have been giving bonuses to their employees, and we've got quite a few more that have made announcements this week. So, first things first, Charter is setting a $15 an hour minimum wage because of tax reform. Charter CEO Tom Rutledge said on Friday that the company will be instituting a $15 per hour minimum wage nationwide by the end of the year. He credits tax reform as well as the FCC's controversial decision to repeal net neutrality as the deciding factors. Quote, a higher minimum wage will put more money in the pockets and help put them and our country on track for an even better future, he said. He also said that pay will be varying by state, but no state will be less than $15 per hour. So again, if you're one of those people that wants to fight for 15, you don't need to have the government do it. You just need to lower taxes, and the companies will do it on their own. The next story that we have up is Massachusetts is ordering utility rates to be cut because of tax reform. The state of Massachusetts has ordered utility companies in the Commonwealth to lower their rates to reflect the reduction caused by the new tax reform law. The state has given all utility companies until May 1st to implement their new rate system. Democratic Attorney General Maura Healey called the DPU decision, quote, a huge victory for ratepayers, and said the agency had agreed with her office that all utility companies in Massachusetts must use the corporate savings from this federal tax bill to lower rates for customers. Both of Massachusetts' Democrat senators and all 9 of their Democrat representatives voted against the tax reform bill. Massachusetts, as you might know, voted 60% for Clinton and 33% for Trump. So even though all essentially 11 of their representatives in Congress, both in the House and in the Senate, every single one of them voted against this tax reform law. And yet it is their state that is going to be directly benefiting from this because they're going to be paying less in their utilities. If that's not winning, I don't know what is.
Yeah, it's stuff that, they couldn't even expect happening, but, they're still benefiting from it.
Yeah, and, this isn't the first thing that's done that. We've seen, I think a couple weeks ago or maybe last week, we talked about how Washington, D.C. even ordered that their rates be cut. So, it's a lot of these blue areas that, have very little Trump support there. These blue areas that have, extremely blue people that are in Congress, and yet they're the ones who are directly benefiting from tax reform. I think at least some people are going to wake up and realize, wait a minute, there might be something here. So the next story that we have up is Chipotle is going to be giving bonuses because of tax reform. So Chipotle will be offering all of their 71,000 employees bonuses because of tax reform. Hourly employees will receive a minimum of $250 and will be eligible for additional parental leave. Managers will receive up to $1,000 in bonuses and will be eligible for expanded life insurance and short-term disability insurance coverage. Chipotle CEO and Chairman Steve Ells said, quote, "We have always been committed to making Chipotle a great place to work with excellent compensation and benefits. With these expanded offerings, we're thanking our employees for their hard work and dedication to our company." So if you're an employee of Chipotle and you're listening to this, I hope you enjoy your little bonus there. And I actually celebrated when I heard this news this day. I went to lunch at Chipotle that day. And, yeah. So vote with your wallet.
I don't know what day that was, but I did have Chipotle 2 days ago. So
I think it was exactly 2 days ago when I had it, too.
Oh, wow.
So coincidence there. I didn't even tell you that. So the next the next company that we have is Humana. The health insurer Humana will be raising its full-time employees' hourly pay to $15 per hour thanks to tax reform. Humana CEO Bruce Broussard announced the measure at their quarterly earnings call on Wednesday. So there you go, another company raising it to $15 per hour. We also have CVS is hiking their wages and offering maternity. So CVS Health and Pharmacy announced on Thursday they will be increasing employee pay and benefits because of tax reform. The move will affect more than 240,000 employees. They will be boosting starting pay for hourly employees to $11 per hour, although actual pay will be based on both location and seniority. Full-time employees will qualify for up to 4 weeks of paid paternal leave and worker health care premiums. And there's one more company that's going to be giving bonuses, and that was Tyson, like Tyson Chicken. They said that they're going to be giving $1,000 bonuses to all of their employees as well. So really, really good news. It seems, every week there's like 5 or 6 more companies are giving bonuses, and Trump tweeted out today, I think they said over 4.5 million Americans are going to be receiving direct bonuses because of tax reform.
It's good stuff.
And remember, every single Democrat voted against that. So, good stuff. Good stuff is right. And the next story that we have here is, as I talked earlier when we were talking about the Dow Jones and how economic indicators are just really good, we have economic optimism is hitting a 13-year high. They said the level of economic optimism reached its highest level since October 2004, according to the IBD/TIPP Economic Optimism Index. The level jumped from 55.1 to 56.7 in January. According to a UBS financial poll last week, 83% say they have a positive outlook on the U.S. economy. The good numbers are rising in part due to tax reform. And I'm just going to kind of tell you how these numbers have changed from the fourth quarter of 2017 to the first quarter of 2018. Talking fiscal years here, I believe. Economic outlook has gone from 65%. Positive economic outlook has gone from 65% to 83%. Market outlook being higher, gone from 62 to 81. Business outlook looking stronger has gone from 77 to 87. And administration approval has gone from 50 to 70%.
Very, very strong stuff.
Yeah, so, economic optimism is at an all-time high. People are really starting to believe that the economy is on the right track. And heck, people's approval of the way the administration is handling the economy is at 70% right now. Okay, 70%. And that's after tax reform. You think the left is going to be able to win elections in November this year when 70% of people approve of the way that the Trump administration is handling the economy? I don't think so.
Let's go on now to the last story that we have for the economy.
Yeah, so the last story we have is jobless claims. This was the number that I was talking about earlier. So initial jobless claims for unemployment benefits fell to 221,000 in January. According to the labor market, this is the lowest level since January of 1973. Economists expected the numbers to be about 232,000, so this fall was very unexpected. The 4-week moving average, which is a more stable indicator for unemployment, also fell, dropping to 224,500, which is the lowest level since March of 1973. Reaction to these numbers is what caused investors to realize that there might be rising interest rates. And after this data came out, the Dow Jones dropped 400 points. So you'd think that good economic data would make the stock market go up, which is essentially what has been happening over the last, 12 to 14 months now. But because of the fact that we're now realizing that this is going to factor into rising interest rates, and the market does not like rising interest rates, that's what's causing the market to go down right now. So maybe things are just a little bit too good right now. And I don't want to use that term, but I almost hate to say it.
Yeah.
So that's really all we have for economics now. And I guess we can move into science and technology. There's only one story we have, but that's out of SpaceX. So they've launched the world's most powerful rocket. The first Falcon Heavy rocket built by the private space company SpaceX soared on its maiden voyage on Tuesday. The rocket, standing at 23 stories tall, the Falcon Heavy rocket is SpaceX's largest. The 27 engines provide 5 million pounds of thrust. The rocket's mission is mostly a test flight. However, this flight is sending a car towards Mars and includes 2 confirmed booster landings. The car, a cherry red Tesla Roadster, has a dummy astronaut and several cameras that will capture some epic views during the trip. The launch brought an estimated 100,000 visitors to Florida's Space Coast. So did you see the video of it launching, Enzo?
I did not.
Yeah, it's actually really, really cool. And I'm really happy with what SpaceX is doing. And I find it hilarious. There was a video from I think this was either from last year or a few years ago, where Neil deGrasse Tyson was talking, and he said something along the lines of, private space exploration will never, it'll never happen, it'll never be successful, governments are the only things that can do it. And yet you have SpaceX launching, a private space company, launching the most powerful rocket in the world, sending a car to Mars. That's just, that's amazing. And I love what SpaceX is doing, and I would love to see them continue. And the thing that's great about this Falcon Heavy rocket that they have is the thing is reusable, or at least the engines and stuff when they fall back to the planet. That they've got little booster rockets on them, so they're able to actually land them safely, so they can reuse them. They did say, however, that I think the 4 or either the 3 or the 4 times the thing has to separate. And then relaunch itself kind of while it's in the air, the little booster mechanisms that it does. The old ones fall back to the earth, and that's kind of where they capture them. They just said that one of them did fail to fire, but it didn't affect the trajectory or anything like that. So they were able to lose one of those, but they saved the rest of them. And I think SpaceX CEO Elon Musk, he actually said something along the lines of, it's okay that we lost that one rocket because it's just, it's just a single, it's just, not really going to say a casualty, but it's things are going to happen. Mistakes are going to be made. We learn from them and we continue to move on. But the Falcon Heavy rocket launch here was a huge success. And if you've seen those pictures of the Roadster that has this dummy astronaut sitting in the driver's seat of it with Earth in the background, one of the coolest pictures I've ever seen in my life.
Hmm. Yeah, it is interesting. The socialists of sorts always say, like, oh, having profit motive is terrible. It makes you this evil person. But here we're seeing, a private company driven by profit motive is pushing the edge of space exploration. So why is it a bad thing that, profit motive is motivating people to accomplish things? You know,
Well,
it's obviously not bad.
yeah. So, I don't know. Are you ready to go to immigration now?
Yeah, we got a lot of stuff in immigration this week.
All right.
Open the door! Immigration!
La migra, vamos, niños!
This week in immigration.
So the first thing that we have on immigration is a drunk illegal alien killed an NFL player. So Indianapolis Colts linebacker Edwin Johnson, 26, and his rideshare operator Jeffrey Monroe, age 54, were killed Sunday morning when they were hit by a drunk driver. What's that, Enzo?
You said Johnson.
Did I say Johnson? I'm sorry, Jackson. Edwin Jackson. The drunk driver was identified as Manuel Orrego Zavala, age 37, an illegal alien who was using the alias Alex Cabrera Gonzalez. He is a Guatemalan national and was twice deported in 2007 and 2009. It's also reported that he was driving without a license, and ICE has a detainer out for him. He was arrested after trying to flee the scene on foot. Indiana's blood alcohol limit is .08, and the driver measured a .239, which is nearly 3 times the legal limit. President Trump tweeted, quote, "So disgraceful that a person illegally in our country killed Colts linebacker Edwin Jackson. This is just one of many such preventable tragedies. We must get the Dems to try to get tough on border and with illegal immigration fast." He then tweeted shortly after saying, quote, "My prayers and best wishes are with the family of Edwin Jackson, a wonderful young man whose life was so senselessly taken."
So yeah, this is a really big tragedy, and this is coming off of the heels of the Super Bowl.
It happened the morning of the Super Bowl. The news actually broke during the Super Bowl. I was watching it when the breaking news thing flashed at the bottom of the screen, and it kind of scrolled by there as I was watching it, and it was kind of, really sad to see as you're watching these guys play in the championship game, to hear that a friend of theirs, one of their own people, one of their own NFL players is killed by someone who should not be in our country, someone who was, had a blood alcohol level 3 times the legal limit, driving without a license, and ICE already had a detainer out for him. This completely could have been preventable. And so, I'd love to see the NFL players maybe next year when they decide to protest the national anthem, maybe you should start protesting illegals in your country as well. That might, save a few of your lives going forward.
Yeah, and like the president said, this was a completely preventable death. This is something that didn't need to happen. Okay, drunk driving with illegal aliens is a massive problem.
It is.
You go back and the administration used to give out the declined detainer reports, which shows you what police agencies are not accepting ICE detainer requests. I always bring this up, every single week, Austin would have 20 or so. And you think about it, that's just the people that they're able to catch, at any given moment. Every single weekend, there's illegal aliens driving around, and, someone can be the next Edwin Jackson. And it's really unfortunate. And in a real country, they wouldn't let this happen. We'd be tough on this.
Yeah, we would be. So hopefully we'll go, get something going forward. And it's sad when these things happen, and they are, as we said, completely preventable. But, the left always, the right always tends to say, why is the left politicizing every tragedy? And frankly, we need to be politicizing tragedies on the right. And this is a tragedy, and we need to politicize it, because there are so many people out there who truly, don't know the full extent of illegal immigration. But now, people who tend to be sports fans just realize, hey, this problem, it's now affecting you as well. That person's family, the entire Indianapolis Colts organization, their fan base, they just lost a player, and that did not need to happen. And frankly, I hope they stand up, and I hope they do something about it as well.
And who's to say he's the last NFL player that's killed in such a fashion?
Yeah.
It's really crazy stuff. let's go now on to some polling numbers we have on how a DACA amnesty would affect GOP primaries.
Yeah, so there was a new poll that was taken by Americans for Legal Immigration PAC, and it shows that DACA amnesty is not doing very well at all among likely Republican primary voters. So the poll showed the following: 67% of likely Republican primary voters say that Congress should be enforcing the laws already on the books. Only 33%, I'm sorry, and this was actually of everybody. This wasn't just among Republican primary voters. 67% of everybody believes that we should be enforcing the laws already in the books. Only 33% say they're in favor of any form of amnesty. So right there, you've only got a third of the country that's actually in favor of amnesty, and that's not Republican voters. However, they said that 71% of GOP voters in red states, that mean being Republican voters in states that voted for Trump, say that Congress should be enforcing the laws already in the books. This includes 80% of Southerners, 79% of men, and 62% of voters in the Midwest. If you look at the GOP voters in red districts in red states, it's even higher. 73% of everybody, 81% of men, 81% of Southerners, and 65% of likely Midwest voters. So essentially what that's saying is none of those numbers were below 60%, meaning that 6 in 10 Republicans across the board, no matter where they're at, especially in Republican states and in Republican districts, are very against any forms of amnesty. And if you control that for just men alone, it's 8 in 10.
Which, like the media always wants to like put out those polls that like, 80% of Americans support a DACA, clean DACA or whatever. But if that was the case, you would see people behaving in such a fashion, but you don't. You look at how members of the House GOP have been behaving. They know that any sort of DACA bill will tank their odds of, 1, winning the primary, but 2, winning their midterms. And you also see how this has been inhibited through the behaviors with Democrat senators and how they've been voting with these shutdowns. I mean, people like Claire McCaskill in Missouri, or Joe Manchin in West Virginia, or Sherrod Brown in Ohio, these people, they can't risk their neck out for these decades, to vote for them, because it is immensely not popular amongst their constituency, especially in red states like they are themselves. If the Democrats want to have any sort of, if they want to retain the seats at least that they have as far as the Senate, they should probably get on board and avoid DACA amnesty as well.
Yeah, so really either way we win. So either we get everything we want in terms of the DACA negotiations and they keep their seats, or they lose their seats, and then after they lose their seats, then we vote for what we want. So either way, we're going to get what we want, and they're not going to be able to.
Yeah. The polling on this stuff is very, very favorable with us. And, I mean, we've always been talking about that Harvard-Harris poll that came out recently. Most of the country sees eye to eye with us on immigration. The vast majority, most independents, even a slight majority of Democrats agree with what we believe on immigration.
Or at least I don't think it was a slight majority of Democrats. I think it was a plurality, but still.
Yeah.
But still.
Let's go now on to what the administration's doing at this National Vetting Center.
Yeah, so Trump is going to be creating a national vetting center for immigrants and foreign travelers. On Tuesday, Trump signed an order to create a national vetting center for those immigrants and foreign travelers. The National Security Council says the vetting center will draw from existing resources from the DHS, State Department, DOJ, and intelligence agencies to coordinate the vetting of immigrants and travelers. This is in line with what President Trump spoke of during the election, calling for extreme vetting of refugees, visa applicants, immigrants, and foreign travelers to the United States. So this is really, really good news. We're trying to, finally starting to vet everybody, no matter who they are, no matter if you're an immigrant or someone who's just coming over here for like a travel visa at all. We want to really make sure we know who exactly we're letting into our country. And this is another one of those things that should have been done such a long time ago. I'm finally glad that's actually being done. But yeah, National Vetting Center, Enzo, what are your thoughts?
It's what needs done. We need to scrutinize anyone that we let in this country, because everyone is, a risk, and we don't want to take risks that we don't need to be taking. I think that's all I need to say on that.
That is absolutely true. So we're going to move on to the next story now, and I'll let you cover this one.
Okay. The Trump administration is testing biometric face scanning. U.S. Customs and Border Protection is preparing to launch a pilot program to scan the faces of drivers and passengers at the Anzalduas port near McAllen, Texas. This program would use facial recognition technology to identify fugitives or terror suspects. They plan to have the program operational by summer, according to the Austin American-Statesman. So this is actually one of the most important things that is happening in immigration that most people don't know about, but the Trump administration has been, and we've talked about this for months, they've been working on biometric entry and exit systems, which this means is, if anyone enters through a port of entry, they're testing this on the border. We have facial recognition of who you are. We can run this through a database that shows, oh, this guy's a criminal that we're looking out for, or we're documenting this is the person that's coming in. And they're testing this here at the border, but the long-term plans is to put this in airports as well, because as they always say, visa overstays is the biggest area for illegal immigration to happen. And where you have an international airport, you're essentially a border state.
Yeah.
You need to do things that way. So biometric face scanning is one of the most important tools in terms of fighting illegal immigration and keeping this country safe. And this stuff's happening now. It's something that most people don't notice, but this should have a big impact on illegal immigration moving forward. And hopefully it works out well there in McAllen.
Yeah, I hope so. And, we know some people that live down in McAllen, so they probably have a lot more in the local news about that. So we're going to be in contact with them and see what they have to say. Obviously they say they plan to have the thing operational by summer, so we'll just have to, we'll have to wait for that to fully be implemented. So give it a couple months and we'll get back to you with that. However, we've got some news stories here, and that is about refugee admissions and how low they're actually going. So refugee admissions are now plunging to a 15-year low. 4 months into fiscal year 2018, refugee admissions to the U.S. have plunged to 6,700, which is the lowest level this far into a fiscal year in 15 years. This was in the, they said the last time that it was this low was in the immediate aftermath of the 9/11 terrorist attacks at the start of fiscal year 2002. If the current levels continue through the rest of fiscal year 2018, total refugee admissions will be less than 21,000, which is the lowest level also since fiscal year 2002, when the total was about 27,000. The 6,700 in the first 4 months of fiscal year 2018 represents a 79% decline from 32,400 from the same period of fiscal year 2017, in which all but 10 days were part of the Obama administration. Of the 6,700, only 13% were Muslim and 60% were Christian. This includes 69% of January refugee admissions that were Christian. In contrast, for the first quarter of fiscal year 2017, 46% were Muslim and 44% were Christian.
So yeah, this is very, very good stuff. We don't really want refugees coming here. They're a fiscal burden to us. Oftentimes they come from dangerous areas. Oftentimes they have mental instabilities based on their prior, situations. And it's just a risk that we don't really need to be taking with American citizens' lives. And very happy to see these huge decline in numbers. Trump, he originally campaigned on just a 50% cut in refugee admissions, and he's, outperforming in that aspect. So, there's always going to be a percentage that we have to take, but we're taking a lot less.
Yeah, as much as I would like to see the refugee number of admissions be zero, I think we all understand that that's not going to happen. Hell of a lot better than if Hillary Clinton was president. She was talking about taking in hundreds of thousands every year, and that's completely insane. The fact that there's a possibility that the total for this year might be less than 30,000, that's incredible, considering that's maybe a tenth of what would be taking in had we lost this election. So, yeah, that's just something to think about.
Let's go on now to the world's most persistent illegal alien.
Yeah, I would love to meet this guy and give him this award in person. So we got the world's most persistent illegal alien has been deported a grand total of 44 times. With data obtained by ICE, it has been discovered that there is an illegal alien from Mexico that has been deported more than any other in the country. This alien has been deported from the U.S. 44 times. The second highest has been deported 40 times. Of the 5 most deported illegal aliens, all of them are from Mexico, and together they have 14 criminal convictions for illegal entry, 7 for illegal re-entry, 3 for vehicle theft, and 1 count of, quote, cruelty towards wife. So, yeah, they're not sending their best. And
Definitely not.
It's amazing. How in the world, after your first deportation, if you're caught in the U.S. again, like, frankly, that should be it for you at that point. Like, you should not have the opportunity to be coming back into this country if you've already been deported. I mean, 44
Our
times,
borders is
like,
way too short.
I was going to say, 44 times you've been deported? Are we playing a child's game here or something? Like I said, after you've been deported, if you want to be lenient on this, people, do a 3 strikes and you're out rule. After your 3rd deportation, it's straight to the gulag for you. But yeah, 44 times, what you said earlier, Enzo, was absolutely right. We are not a serious country when we're allowing shit like this to continue and go on.
No, not at all.
Nope.
So, yeah, I want to go on to the next thing. I'll cover it.
Yeah, go right ahead.
The New York Police Department declined every immigration request in 2017. According to an ICE report, New York police ignored all 1,526 requests from ICE to detain illegal aliens last year. The 2017 numbers were nearly 20 times higher than 2016's grand total of 80. The New York Police Department responded to only 2 of those in 2016. New York City is a sanctuary city and will only respond to ICE if a prisoner is convicted of 1 or more of 170 crimes and an official has to personally present a warrant.
So that's not good at all.
So, yeah, this is a branch of our government deciding to not answer to a department that is supreme to them. You talk about the supremacy clause with the Constitution. The immigration is set at the federal level. Is a federal institution, and New York police should cooperate with them. It's not making New York City any safer by not cooperating with them. All those people that they declined to detain, all 1,526 of them, they just need to go free. Okay? That's what happens when, a detainer is declined. I don't understand how that makes things better.
It doesn't. And in fact, in order to receive a detainer or anything, those people had to have been caught anyways, right?
Yeah, it means that they're arrested and they're in jail. And when ICE puts a detainer on you, it means that ICE is requesting the police to hold you there until they can pick.
Yeah, so, we're not talking about, the whole, what's the term that the left likes to use? People that, otherwise law-abiding people living in this country. That's 1,500 people last year in New York City alone that are illegal immigrants that were arrested, all of which should have been deported, none of which were, or at least, none of which were because of the ICE detainers. So it's not like we're talking about these people are just, law-abiding citizens. They are not. They are people that are breaking the law and getting arrested.
But these sanctuary cities don't care. They just want to let these criminals back onto the streets because, if you're not here legally, I guess you have more rights than American citizens.
Unfortunately,
it's
it seems like that's true. It does seem like illegals have more rights than American citizens.
They're trying to decriminalize their, illegality.
Yeah, they are. And so that's why it's such an imperative that we do get immigration reform that we want passed in Congress and signed by the president so that we can really, really start to cramp down on these things. But
and why we need to continue to go after sanctuary cities.
Yeah.
Because we can't let them hold citizens hostage to these, fanatics.
Yeah, and we should be denying them funding. And if you're wondering, and this is something that I'm going to go ahead and plug the video that we just did, really, really, if you live in Texas right now, you should go to our YouTube channel. Link is in the description below. Watch the Texas primary video. Figure out what district you live in Texas, if you do live in Texas. And I'm not saying go and watch the entire video, but definitely kind of, scroll through it until you find your district and really figure out who is running and who these people are and what they believe. Because if you're someone who wants this type of stuff to continue, bad things happening, all you got to do is just not vote, because that's what's really going to happen. If you're someone who's listening to this and you're not voting in November, then you do have a serious problem. But that being said, you should figure out who is running in your district, figure out especially what their views on immigration are, and that's kind of what I did when I went through these people, is I'm focusing on what is this person's view on immigration, more so than other policies, because frankly, if someone's policies is like, your basic Republican beliefs or your basic Democrat beliefs, there's really no point in even writing that down. But I really want to make sure that I got everybody, both Republican, Democrat, Libertarian, etc., get what their views on immigration are so that we can know exactly who it is we are electing and who we're voting for. Because if you want in the future stuff like the RAISE Act to be passed, you want to make sure that we have people in office that would vote for it and believe what we believe when it comes to immigration. And if you want people like pro-sanctuary city people to be elected, all you got to do is sit home and not vote. So really go back, watch that video, figure out who's in your district, who's running, and make an informed decision as an informed voter. But with that being said, we can move on to this story here, I guess. Ready?
Yeah, let's move on.
So this story we have here is dreamers in the military won't be deported. So Defense Secretary Jim Mattis said on Thursday that DACA recipients who have served, are serving, or who have signed up to serve in the armed forces will not be deported. He said, quote, anyone who is in the delayed enlistment program, in other words, they are already signed up and they're waiting to go into boot camp, anyone on active duty, anyone in the active reserves, and anyone with an honorable discharge is right now, except for two possible exceptions, they will not be subject to any kind of deportation. Mattis said the two exceptions will be if they committed a serious felony or if a federal judge signs a final order of deportation. Thankfully, though, this decision by Mattis will only affect about 900 DACA recipients. So, as much as I want to see all of these people gone, this is probably the only exception that I'm willing to make, and that's for people that served in the military, especially if they're currently serving in the military. I don't think it's right to deport them. And obviously, people that signed up to serve that haven't actually gone to boot camp yet, that's really about as far as I'm willing to go, and especially if someone has served in the military with an honorable discharge. What do you think about that, Enzo?
I don't get why we're letting non-citizens serve in the armed forces.
Well, a lot of people that are immigrants to this country can earn their citizenship by serving in the military. That is one thing that does happen a lot. But I actually agree. I don't think that people who came into the country illegally should be allowed to serve in the military. I think if you're someone who wants to be an immigrant to the country and does it the legal way and then you decide to serve, that's one thing. Granted, we should be limiting that number as well, don't get me wrong. But yeah, this decision, it's one of those things where it's like, I wish I could have changed the circumstances leading up to it, but we can't. We can only change what is actually going on. I think if you're going to have any sort of DACA discussion in deportation, if you want to try to at least be reasonable with this, I do think that this is probably the right idea to take. As much as like I said, as much as I want to see every last one of those people removed from this country, if you've been in the military or you're in the military, U.S. military, that is, I think that's the one time where I will be like, okay, fine, maybe you can stay. But even then, if they commit a serious felony or if a judge says that they need to be deported, then they're still gone. So yeah.
And this isn't, we're not talking about a lot of people.
We're talking about 900 people out of roughly 800,000 or 700,000, the numbers that they're throwing around there. Now, the whole quote-unquote dreamers that they always say, that number is probably close to over 2 million, I believe, is the number that is probably the more accurate, somewhere around there. So we're not talking about a lot of people, and whenever they do refer to the DACA kids, they're all college graduates, they're all so brave, they're all so smart and intelligent. Honestly, the ones that probably are the best of the best are probably these ones anyway. I know there are a lot of not very good people that are in the military right now, but if they've gone through what they've gone through and they've been in, or they're in right now or they want to join, they probably are the better ones. Use air quotes around the word better there. than the rest of them. So yeah, it's one of those things where it's like I understand what they're doing, and I really don't have a problem with it.
Yeah. Let's go into the last story that we have for immigration. I can read it.
Yeah, go ahead.
The Trump administration may block permanent residency of immigrants on welfare. The DHS has drafted a proposal that would negatively affect legal immigrants' chances of obtaining permanent residency if he or she used public benefits prior to applying for their status. The new rules would allow USCIS officers to consider an applicant's reliance on taxpayer-funded benefits, including food assistance, government preschool programs, utility bill subsidies, and health insurance premiums. The proposal states a person would be deemed a public charge if he or she relies on any government assistance in the form of cash, checks, or other forms of money transfers, or instrument and non-cash government assistance in the form of aid services or other relief. Additionally, the proposal states non-citizens who receive public benefits are not self-sufficient and are relying on U.S. government and state and local entities for resources instead of their family sponsors or private organizations. The change will affect up to 400,000 people. So this is extremely important to be getting done because you look at the usage of government assistance. It's at higher rates amongst legal and illegal immigrants than the native population.
Almost twice the rate.
Yeah, almost twice the rate if you look this stuff up. And why do we need to be importing dependence of the state? Bringing people here that are dragging down the people already here who have been paying into the system. That doesn't make sense. So this is going to disqualify a lot of people that want to get permanent residency here that have even legal status. And I don't want you here if you're a burden. And I've also heard in regards to this, they're looking to do this in terms of denying status to people that have anchor babies that receive government assistance. So this is going to be something that applies not only to the people that are their dependents as well. So really great stuff. It'll change immigration a lot if they can get this through, and it's going to be a change for the better that will put Americans first.
Yeah, so this is really good, and I'm really, really excited to see where we go forward, especially now that the whole budget situations are, essentially over. Now it's just immigration's the next thing people are tackling. And you know how Trump was saying that, or people were saying that Trump's next move was to go after like welfare abuse and stuff? This kind of goes along with that. I mean, people thought that quote-unquote welfare abuse is going to be talking about a lot of food stamp stuff. Why not, do the immigration aspect of it first before you move on to the rest of welfare reform? I think this is a brilliant plan.
And this is stuff that he can do without having to pass any law through Congress. He's just using the institutions already at his hand to do his bidding. So it's really great stuff. And, Trump has gotten a lot done on immigration since becoming in office, and he's gotten a lot done without having to pass any sort of bills. The power of his ballpoint to set agendas for his different institutions is very strong. It can't be understated.
Yeah, so that's some really good news, and I'm looking forward to it, like I said. So I guess we can now move into the 2018 elections. So we really only have one story here, and this is a poll that was taken by Morning Consult. It shows that Democrats are now losing ground on some key issues. So a newly released Morning Consult poll shows congressional Democrats are losing ground on key issues just as the primaries are getting started. So the way this works is there's a couple of different topics, and it's got the June 2017 numbers and the February 2018 numbers, because June 2017 was the last time they took this poll. And you can see that, just over the last, 6 to 8 months, how viewpoints have changed and how favorable the parties are. So first up, we have the economy. Back in June, Democrats 40, Republicans 42. Now in February, that's Democrats 36, Republicans 45. So that's an R plus 9 right now, meaning Republicans are favored 45-30 in terms of who do you think is handling their economy better, meaning that Republicans have a net gain of +7. In terms of job creation, back in June, Democrats 40, Republicans 42. February 2018, Democrats 37, Republicans 43, which is a R+6 and a Republican gain of +4. In terms of national security, back in June, Democrats 37, Republicans 43. In February now, it's Democrats 33, Republicans 46, which is R+13 now, in a Republican gain of +7. In terms of immigration, back in June, Democrats 40, Republicans 43. In February, Democrats 37, Republicans 43, which is now an R+6 and a Republican gain of +3. In terms of energy, this is the only thing really that has Democrats ahead. In terms of energy, it's June was Democrats 44, Republicans 34. And in February, it's Democrats 40, Republicans 36. So that's still a D+4, but Republicans have gained +6 net overall for that. So what you can see is that every single one of those issues, Republicans, with the exception of energy, Republicans had small leads back in June. Now they have decent-sized leads. And if Republicans across the board are favored on the economy, job creation, national security, and immigration, leading up to a midterm cycle that is going to be defined by immigration and the economy, and Republicans are favored by +6 to +9 to even +13 for national security and all those things, who do you think is going to come out on top of these elections? It's not going to be Democrats. There's not going to be a blue wave if Republicans are favored on all the issues that are important to people.
Yeah, this is just another in a long line of polls that we've shown that shows that the Democrats are actually in very bad straits coming into the midterms. And, you know, I want them to have this optimism because it doesn't actually, show itself in any of the numbers that we've gone over the last couple of weeks. They're in for a rude awakening come the midterms, and it excites me a lot. And it really just goes to show that, like, what is the Democrat message on these different things? I mean, what are they saying on the economy or job creation or national security or immigration that is not only one, popular, but two, actually is better than what the Republicans are doing presently? Because at the moment, we go over numbers. Most people think the Republicans are doing a good job on the economy. They're doing a good job on job creation. They support what they're trying to do on immigration, tenfold. So what are they really saying that puts them in a favorable light for the midterms? It's nothing at this point.
Yeah, the only thing Democrats are able to do right now is just get a bunch of retweets and likes by a bunch of cat ladies and hashtag resistors on Twitter. But, outside of, what do you call it? I guess you could say outside the coasts and like liberal, their own liberal circles of friends that they have, their, what's the word I'm looking for? Echo chambers. They really have nothing. And average, everyday Americans, they don't like what the Democrats are doing, and they do favor what Republicans are doing. And for your average, everyday American, things are going pretty well right now, especially with the economy. And so, like, if you have people that are talking about all this crazy nonsense, like, oh, tax reform is it's just tax cuts for the rich. It's not gonna benefit anyone. Meanwhile, you're someone who works at Chipotle and you're getting your $250 bonus. You're like, what the hell are you talking about? So,
And like, we look at how their generic ballot lead over the last couple of months has completely gone away now. I mean, I haven't looked as of last week when we talked about it, but, they went from having a 12-point command in generic ballot to only 2 points. And, I mean, with that trend, it's only going to go down. You look at how, these things amongst independents are polling, and they have no sway on things whatsoever. They're not doing well in generic ballots for independents. You look at how Trump's State of the Union went. I mean, the polling numbers, it's not good for them.
Yeah,
There's red signs all across the board for them.
Yeah, even it was like 46 or something like that percent of Democrats that watched the State of the Union had a favorable opinion. 75% of independents that watched the State of the Union saw it favorable, and 97% of Republicans. So, you're not going to do very well.
Those are numbers that matter.
Yeah, those are numbers that really do matter. And, I talk a lot about the economic optimism numbers. Those are the numbers that matter, too. And as big of an issue as immigration is, let's not forget, the issues that always pull highest as like the importance to people is national security, economics, and it used to be other things, but now it's immigration. And so those three things alone, look at those numbers. On the economy, it's currently R plus 9. Job creation, R plus 6. National security, R plus 13. Immigration, R plus 6. Republicans have the advantage in every single one of those issues. The only thing Democrats have the advantage of is energy. And no one cares about energy in terms of it being a big, important issue for this midterm election. Is it important? Of course it is. Is it important to this midterm election? Not the way things are going. Immigration and the economy is what matters, and that's what Republicans are winning at right now.
And in terms of actually what we're doing on energy, like, we're still doing well, like, as far as the Trump administration is going. I mean, we're energy independent at this point.
Yeah, essentially. I mean,
So
the
as
U.S.
people
is now, for the first time
actually
ever, is an
based
energy
on-
exporter.
Yeah.
I'm sorry,
So,
I talked over
yeah,
you there
good
for a
stuff
second.
there. Yeah. Let's go on to the Schiff story that we have for Career College Craziness.
Yeah, so this story is hilarious. So Adam Schiff there fell for some Russian pranksters. So Representative Adam Schiff from California, Democrat, fell for a spoof by Russian pranksters who back in 2017 posed as Ukrainian leaders who promised him compromising dirt on President Trump. The pranksters are comedians nicknamed Vovon and Lexus, who have become famous for high-profile fake calls to celebrities such as Elton John and politicians such as UN Ambassador Nikki Haley. According to the call, the pranksters offered Schiff nude photos of Trump and claimed that Russian President Vladimir Putin had copies of the pictures. They also told Schiff that the pictures were being kept secret in order for Trump to remove sanctions on Russia. And some audio of the phone call appeared on YouTube before the story was picked up in the Atlantic magazine and UK Daily Mail newspaper. So, they offered this to Schiff, and Schiff fell for it. It's hilarious.
It shows like how eager they are to get anything, because there's not any actual like evidence for him to use.
No,
Like, if
there's
Schiff was confident what he has on Trump, he wouldn't like fall for this stuff.
yeah, and you'd think someone would be able to, know this, but I mean, we all kind of know that Adam Schiff's credibility there is none. Schiff hits the fan every single time he talks. But yeah, this guy is he's insane. He's crazy. He's got a lot of problems. If you would ask people who Adam Schiff was this time last year, very few people would have heard of him. But nowadays, like, he's one of my most hated Democrats, and I don't hate him because he does evil things, even though he does. I hate him because he's such a nuisance to us right now, and his presence is just, it makes everything just annoying. He's not serving to benefit this country at all. All he exists to do is be a leading anti-Trump voice in the House of Representatives. And now it comes out that he's stupid enough to fall for Russian pranksters who pose as Ukrainians saying, hey, we have nude pictures of Trump, and Putin has these pictures and he's using these pictures to try to get Trump to do his bidding. No, it's that obviously sounds stupid. Anyone can try to verify that, but the fact that he fell for it proves that his hatred of Trump is more important than his commitment to the truth.
Yeah, he's a very dumb person. But yeah, one of the most humorous things that's happened this week, and if you haven't heard the prank calls, yeah, go look them up on YouTube.
Yeah.
Let's go and get into some Career College Craziness.
The racist, sexist, homophobic, xenophobic. You're a fucking white male!
The assumption that women are naturally better caregivers is part of patriarchy.
Die, sis, scum.
They will not divide us! They will not divide us! They will not divide us! They will not divide us!
It's time for some current year college craziness.
So the first story that we have in current year college craziness is, well, actually, no. Do you want to do your intro? I'm sorry, I interrupted you there.
Yeah, I'll do my intro. Current year college craziness, segment of the show where we go over the crazy stuff that happens on college campuses every single week here and abroad, but predominantly here because we got the craziest colleges here in the United States, the very best. And the first story that we have is out of Cal State.
Yeah, so a Cal State professor called Trump a white supremacist orange reality star in a class syllabus. So a political science professor at California State University, Dominguez Hills, which is south of Los Angeles, described President Trump in her class syllabus as a, quote, white supremacist and orange reality star. The professor is Dr. Brooke Muscagni, who teaches the American Political Institutions class at the university. She also teaches feminist studies and social movements. Her course description reads, quote, the study of politics and government is a study of power. The President of the United States won in 2016 election by appealing to bigotry and hatred. Just about every day, a new scandal breaks or evidence of corruption emerges. Moreover, the Republican Party controls the executive and legislative branches of government, yet couldn't manage to keep the government running on the one-year anniversary of Trump's inauguration. And oh yeah, Russia interfered in the U.S. electoral process, and our president is under investigation for obstruction of justice. How did we get here? What facilitated Trump's rise to power? How is California challenging these threats to our democracy? The syllabus goes on to say, quote, we are living in a crucial time for American democracy. Future generations will wonder how the people of what was once considered the greatest democracy in the world elected a white supremacist, misogynist, narcissistic, volatile, belligerent, uninformed, stubborn, failed businessman and orange reality star to the highest office. How will you explain it?
It's funny that they bring up the government shutdown, and I imagine this required 60 votes in the Senate to, avoid the shutdown. And even though the Republicans have the majority in the Senate, they don't have 60 votes. So it's not solely on them why it shut down.
No, and
But like I said, she understands. She's preying on these kids that don't know that.
No, and I've always wondered how much is this people just preying on the stupidity of children, and how much is these people stupidity in themselves? I mean, you can't put it past some people to where their hatred of Trump really does clog their rational viewpoints of things. I mean, the first thing that I read there, the whole thing of the syllabus, every single point that she made out there is false. I mean, I'm not going to read it again, but as I'm going through this, I'm thinking, every single thing that she's saying here, I can counter that off the top of my head to tell you why it's wrong. And, of course, there's a lot of opinion in there. But, it goes on to say at the end where she says, when she talks about, how can someone so uninformed and stubborn be in this office? I'm thinking to myself, uninformed? Literally, lady, every single thing that you just said was not true. And any student taking your class, which, frankly, let's not kid ourselves. It's Cal State, Dominguez Hills, south of Los Angeles. It's not very far from, Inglewood and Compton and areas like that. So we're not talking about people that are Republicans that are probably going to be taking this class. And if anything, it reinforces a leftist viewpoint on the world for anyone who's actually taking this class. And that's really unfortunate because, we talk about how college should be a place where that should be open to different people's viewpoints, where you should really, learn about other people's opinions, hear different viewpoints, hear people talk, expand your horizons and really become a smart and informed, rational thinker. That's not what this colleges exist anymore for. This class right here, if she's teaching the way that her syllabus thinks that, she's going to be teaching, it is literally nothing more than a liberal echo chamber that is reinforcing their own beliefs by saying things that completely are not true. Like I said, I can dispute every single thing that she just said in her course description off the top of my head. And she's a professor who's being paid how many thousands of dollars every year? Who, what she tells to these students is going to influence their line of thinking for the rest of their lives, possibly? At least for the, for the short term, definitely for this 2018 election cycle. You want to talk about how you win Republicans? You stop letting liberals be your you stop let liberals be your professors at these universities, or at least you really, really need. I think the United States really, really does need to have a a discussion about who we are letting teach our students and exactly what we are allowing our students to be taught. Because if this professor is teaching things which, frankly, are almost 100% not true, what more, do we really want to allow our students to be taught lies? I hate to say that, but is that true? Like, I really do think that, you talk about, oh, it's free speech or something like this. You really need to start drawing a line of, okay, what is free speech and this is pure propaganda that is teaching people lies and is making people dumb and uninformed. There really needs to be a discussion in this country about where we are headed and what we allow our people to do. And frankly, if I was in control and I had the ultimate say, this person would not be a professor in this class, would not be taught the way that it should be. And there are so many thousands and thousands of professors out there who are exactly like her.
Yeah. Let's move on to the next story, though.
This is yours.
Yeah, college should revise Western civilization class because it's too white. Leaders at Reed College in Portland, Oregon, have agreed to revise a mandatory freshman Humanities 101 course that focuses on Western canon in the wake of a student protest campaign against a class that decries it as too cockoid and Eurocentric. The protest was led by a student group, Reedies Against Racism, that demands that the class be reformed to represent the voices of people of color. Quote, I'm a student of color who has trouble focusing because the curriculum at Reed is Eurocentric and is unrelated to my lived experience. Being told that the West is the most important topic of study damages my mental health and makes me less able to learn. I think this is true for many, many students of color, and this is part of why we do what we do, said Alex Boyd, a Maine Reedies Against Racism organizer last September. The course had traditionally focused on scholars underpinning Western civilization and assigned books written by Greco-Roman thinkers such as Aristotle, Plato, and Ovid, as well as from Mesopotamia and Egypt. Faculty appear to have agreed to broaden the scope of the course to allow for more authors of color and to study thinkers from geographic locations beyond Europe. So, one of the things that really stands out for me is the student says, this is unrelated to my lived experience. Well, of course it is. They're teaching about something that isn't your lived experience.
Right.
You just that it's damaging to yourself to learn about things that white people did because you hate white people. That's essentially what it comes down to. You don't want to learn about the history of thought in the world because some of the people that led to that, path to where we are today were people that don't look like you. And that hurts you for some reason.
Yeah, I mean,
why does that even matter, though? Like, it's just, there's thought leaders in the world that aren't white, but it doesn't impact me in my quote-unquote lived experience and my mental health to learn about what they contributed. It's a little insane. And as far as, wanting to teach Western civilization authentically, like, it wasn't a diverse thing throughout the course of history. I'm sorry to say.
No, it wasn't. And, in regards to the whole, like, oh, this goes against my lived experience because it's people that, aren't me. One of the most famous books ever written is called Sun Tzu's The Art of War. Okay, it was written by Sun Tzu, who is not white, and yet the art of war is used by millions and millions and millions of people who have served in militaries throughout the world for the last thousands of years, okay? Even to this day, when you're going through military training in the United States, you're taught about Sun Tzu's Art of War. It's not really required reading, but if you're an officer in the military, I guarantee that you have at least looked that up and read parts of it, because it's so important. It is, something that is old, was written by someone who is not white, and yet we use it to this day. Okay, where's the people in the military complaining of, a white person in the U.S. military complaining, this is something that's against, it's not part of my worldview and my lived experience. Where's a black person in the military or a Hispanic person in the military saying, oh, this is unrelated to my lived experience? It doesn't make any sense. And you don't hear people complaining about it when it's our side that's doing it, or talking about, thinkers from outside of what is, I guess, known as white Western civilization thought processes. We aren't complaining about anything that's from other parts of the world, because we know that these were smart people that figured things out, and we use it to benefit our own society. What these people want to do is they say, I don't care if this has benefited our society, it's not us, and we want to change it.
And these are the same people that will go on and spout about, white fragility or whatever.
Yeah.
But, here in the quote, they say, being told that the West is the most important topic of study, which I doubt that the class says that whatsoever.
No, of course not.
Damages their mental health and makes them less able to learn. Sounds to me like you got an overabundance of brown fragility there.
Yeah,
I'm just saying.
The truth.
If learning about these things damages you and your perception of the world, they have this saying called "my truth," that there's like no objective truth. Truth is this relative thing towards them. That's where the real damage is coming from, to have such a self-centric view of the world, not Eurocentric. Is just learning what European people did. But let's go on to the next story. I got this one as well.
Go right ahead.
Whiteness group doesn't allow whites to ask black people questions. A student group formed to address white privilege at Ohio's Kenyon College is banning white members from asking questions of a person of color as part of a process to combat racism. Quote, racism is a white people problem, said the student group founders Juniper Cruz, a self-described queer Afro-Latinx Muslim. The whiteness group, which works at the school's multicultural center, quote, works to educate students on whiteness, what it means to be white, and ways to deconstruct whiteness to work towards anti-racist actions. Cruz said in an interview with The Hill, quote, the discussions explore what it means to be a white person while benefiting from societal privilege, as well as what it means to be a white ally to marginalized groups. She went on to say, I decided to start this group last semester when I got tired of white people who would post these very intellectual and passionate statuses on their social media accounts, but that's as far as their activism went. The Kenyan Collegian newspaper reported, quote, some ground rules at the Snowden Multicultural Center whiteness group. If you have an unpopular opinion, speak up. No white person can ask a person of color questions. White people must try to answer their questions for themselves, and no spreading rumors about what people say during the meeting. So this entire organization is blatantly anti-white, and her desire to start a group attacking white privilege purely comes from a place of she wants to attack white people in a protected way, which they talk about societal having societal privilege. This is an individual that has institutional privilege, like demonstrably. They're getting a platform to talk about this in The Hill, which is one of the biggest newspapers in the country. Like, they're not a disadvantaged person at all. They're the ones that get to set the discussion on things. If we live in this white supremacist society, how is this even being allowed?
And
it's evident that we don't.
I was going to say, and it all stems from their hatred of white people. They don't care about anti-racism. What they care about is exactly what they said here. Look at what the description was. Works to educate students on whiteness and what it means to be white, and ways to deconstruct whiteness to work towards anti-racist actions. How about you change that to black there? The blackness group works to educate students on blackness, what it means to be black, and ways to deconstruct blackness to work towards anti-racist actions. They're essentially, what they're saying is, I don't care what it means. I want to deconstruct your whiteness. I want to destroy your whiteness. You saw that in Rudy Martinez's article that we covered, in the episode titled Our DNA is an Abomination. They don't care about anything. What they care is about destroying white people and getting rid of them. And you think that if a student group was, had the same stuff, but it was anti-black or anti-Muslim or anti-Latino, you think that would be allowed? You think they'd be interviewed in The Hill? No. You're exactly right. You talk about societal privilege. They do have institutional privilege. Who doesn't have institutional privilege? It's white people. White people don't have institutional privilege. White people don't even have societal privilege. You know, everything anti-white is promoted in our society. Things that are pro-white are not promoted in our society, and they are condemned by our society. Anytime whites speak up for themselves, it is condemned, especially on college campuses. And anytime someone tries to be anti-white in a college campus, they're applauded. They're in the hill. They're allowed to do this. Who has the real institutional society of privilege here? And the thing is, these are people who think that they don't have any power at all. Imagine what happens when they do have the power. You think that they're going to be peaceful to these people? No, they're going to try to wipe you off the face of the planet.
Yeah, and the whole usage of the word privilege is just a means to attack people. It's a smear on people. It's a way to say your hatred towards this group is okay because they're privileged. And we talk about how they have institutional power, talking the grounds of Snowden Multicultural Center. I don't imagine that one of the cultures accepted there would be white cultures or the contributions of white people, because that's not considered a culture, even though they have done things for cultural advancements in the world. It's I don't know. It's just frustrating. But let's go on to the next story.
So I'll actually go ahead and read this one if you want.
Okay.
Yeah, so Harvard is banning single-gendered clubs except for women. Last year, Harvard University took steps to ban on and off-campus single-gender organizations. In early February of this year, the school finalized the ban. However, due to the outcry of campus feminists, only leaders and members of, quote, male-focused single-gendered clubs will face repercussions from Harvard. According to Harvard, the single-gendered clubs propagate exclusionary values and maintain forms of privilege that the school found distasteful and outdated. Those who remain in such clubs, reports Reason magazine, risk being barred from leadership positions, athletic teams, and scholarships. The Harvard administration listened, and so while the heads and members of male-only groups will be subject to immediate punishment under the policy, women's groups will have 5 years to come up with ways to comply with the new rules. Until then, they can call themselves female-focused and be considered to be in line with the policy change. A few prestigious finals clubs are also lawyering up, preparing to sue the school under the theory that Harvard is unnecessarily burdening students' right to free association and that Harvard cannot punish members of clubs that don't officially exist on Harvard's campus.
So this is all just really insane. And I mean, this can have repercussions in people's ability to even go to college. But, they talk about how these single-gender clubs propagate exclusionary values. The only people that aren't allowed to be exclusionary are males. Women can be exclusionary all they want.
Yeah.
They say that male groups propagate forms of privilege. But then, the school behaves in such a way that privileges female-only groups and completely abolishes male-only groups. So who really has the privilege? Who's the one that's actually influencing the administration? It's again an instance where the people that claim to be oppressed from, their crazy intellectual pseudoscience theories are actually the people that have the most power. Do you think the guys at these colleges that were part of these single-gender clubs have any power in the situation that they are in? No, that's why they're getting lawyers who are trying to defend their rights to a freedom of association. I mean, these are clubs that aren't even, officially sanctioned by the campus, and Harvard's going after these people.
Yeah, these are people that could.
Why is that important?
Yeah, like if you're a guy who's part of a group of guys who kind of make a club that's off campus, doesn't do anything on campus, doesn't meet on campus, but simply, is made up of Harvard students who happen to be male, and there aren't any females in the group, you could lose your scholarship because of that. What kind of clown world are we living in right now?
Yeah. And how does that make, Harvard a better academic institution?
It makes it worse if you...
by kicking out these students.
I was going to say, it makes it worse if you... as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, that's insane. Let's go into the last one. Would you mind reading it?
Yeah, no problem. So, ICE flyers on campus hurt the feelings of liberals. Students at Stanford University got triggered after some ICE flyers were posted on campus. Apparently, a student placed them at the Kimball Hall dorm for satirical reasons. The student, Isaac Kipust, was summoned before the Associate Dean of Students, Alejandro Martinez. Quote, since 3 students felt unsafe and hurt, they and the Kimball RAs had removed my flyers, Kipust wrote in a piece for the Stanford Review. Quote, according to them, my flyers were considered hate speech and hence inappropriate for the Kimball community. Because they apparently mocked a flyer protecting an identity group, they constituted an act of intolerance. Most egregiously, because of their effect on the 3 crying students at the table, I was not permitted to repost my flyers, he wrote, describing what he was told during the meeting. He said he was shocked to see that their feelings trumped my right to express speech others might find objectionable. In a second meeting with Capust, lead residence dean Lisa de la Cruz Caldera brought Stanford professor Peter Berkowitz, an apparent free speech expert. She also brought a strongly worded defense letter from Stanford law professor Michael McConnell. Cruz Caldera conceded that his free speech rights had been violated and took efforts to protect speech via flyering. So what started as a leftist crybaby session ended with more free speech for conservatives. So this is one of those few stories where things actually ended in a good way.
It's funny that, ICE, it's a government, it's a federal institution, and flyering for ICE is considered hate speech. Like, essentially they're saying that ICE existing is hate speech.
No, they do believe
because
that.
It's attacking it. Yeah, no, this is exactly what they believe. Because it's quote, mocking a flyer protecting an identity group. Why are we protecting an identity group which is based on an identity of criminality? That's just insane.
Exactly. And so thank God that this story actually ended, good. And I would hate to see what the thought is, or what the feelings are, what the reaction to is of those 3 students that were crybabies who were crying at the table over, oh no, this is a nice flyer, oh God, it's deporting me, oh no. I would love to see their reaction when that decision came down from the top saying, oh, by the way, your free speech rights were violated and we're going to protect you doing this in the future. That's hilarious as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah. Let's go into international news now. Do you want to start with maybe Europe, then go to the Middle East and close with the Americas, because I know you want to close with a story out of Canada.
Yeah, so we're doing Europe first here. So the first, actually, this is your story, so you can do it. Yeah. I'll read the next one.
Okay. Malmo police armed with machine guns to take back control. Police officers in the Swedish city of Malmo will now be armed with Heckler and Koch MP5 machine guns. The new move comes as an antidote to the rampant criminality and attacks against law enforcement as a way to ramp up security. In 2016, according to data accumulated by Swedish newspapers, Malmo was the city with the most murders per capita in all of Scandinavia. Here, SVT reported in November 2017 that 2017 became the worst year for shootings in Sweden in decades. So, we always talk about the huge spike in crime that's gone in Sweden and, across all nations that have taken in a large amount of these migrants. It's gotten to the point where now they need to carry MP5, submachine guns for the police officers to keep the order. And this used to be one of the most peaceful countries in the world.
Yeah, the socialist utopia that they always say about the Scandinavian countries.
And immigration destroyed it. It used to be where they would have no crime whatsoever comparatively what's happening now. But now the police have to take back their cities with weapons of war, and that's how bad it's gotten there. So, real bad stuff out of Sweden, but hopefully the police can get things under control because, when they go into these no-go zones, which I believe there's over 65 now in Sweden, the police officers get attacked. Not only just rocks or anything, but now they get shot and grenades get thrown at them. I mean, you look at the amount of grenade attacks that have gone on in Sweden in the past couple of years. It's insane. They're fighting full-on terrorists. It's really bad stuff.
And you know, I have fired an MP5 machine gun full auto when I went to the gun store in Las Vegas, and I got to tell you, it's not very that gun is not very heavy. It's light and it can do some pretty good damage. So that's a good pick. That's a good pick for those police officers, is what I got to say.
Yeah.
So
let's go on to the second story now.
Yeah. So I said I'll go ahead and read this one. So thousands are paying respect to a downed hero Russian pilot. So thousands of people gathered in the Russian city of Voronezh, to attend a memorial service for Russian pilot Major Roman Filipov, 34, who was shot down in Syria and gave his life fighting terrorists on the ground. Major Filipov's Su-25 aircraft was downed by militants in Syria last Saturday. The jet was likely hit by a heat-seeking anti-aircraft missile fired from a portable device. One of the plane's engines caught fire, the second one stalled, and Filipov was forced to eject. Militants surrounded the landing site, and Filipov began a firefight with them. He managed to empty almost 2 magazines before being gravely wounded, and waited until they got close to him before he shouted, "This is for the boys," and blew himself up with a hand grenade, killing multiple militants in the process. Filipov was posthumously awarded Russia's highest honor, the Hero of Russia Medal.
I believe they have video of his last stand too, where he blew himself up.
I was just going to ask you if you'd seen the video, because I saw it. Someone shared it on Facebook. I watched it, and it's pretty intense to watch it.
I hadn't watched the video, but I know it's out there.
When we're done, I'll send you a link to it. Yeah, if you're listening to this and you haven't seen it, just go search on Facebook or YouTube or something, and you'll find a copy of the video. It's just type in Russian jet shot down over Syria. You'll find it there. And this guy is a hero, though. I mean, his plane gets shot down. He gets out. He's in a firefight. I heard he killed at least 5 of them before before blowing himself up. And I heard he also killed at least 3 people in the grenade explosion. So he probably killed at least 8 to 10 people. 8 to 10 militants, that is, who are fighting him. So this guy is a hero. He's won the Hero of Russia medal, and I think, frankly, this guy's legacy should live on through history.
Yeah. And we talk about how we want better relations with Russia. I mean, this is the level of like dedication to honor that the Russian military has. Why don't we want to be fighting on the same side as these guys against terrorists?
We should be wanting to, frankly.
We should be wanting to, yeah. Let's go on now to the Middle East. There's been a lot of stuff happening out there. And the first thing that we need to get into is what's been happening with Israel and Syria. I'll start off. Israel launches attacks into Syria. On Tuesday night, Israel launched a major attack on Syrian government locations near Damascus in what seems like Israel's attempt to provoke a war with Syria. Strikes occurred at 3:42 a.m. local time on Wednesday morning and reportedly attacked a chemical weapons facility. Going on to the next thing that's related to that, Israel downs Iranian drone, F-16 crashes in Syria. In its most serious engagement in neighboring Syria since fighting began there in 2011, Israel shot down an infiltrating Iranian drone Saturday and struck Iranian targets deep in Syria before one of its own jets were downed. Israel calls the drone infiltration a severe and irregular violation of Israeli sovereignty and warned that Israel would be held accountable for its meddling, or not Israel, Iran would be held accountable for its meddling, raising the specter of a larger confrontation in an area that has remained largely stable since a month-long war between Israel and Hezbollah in Lebanon in 2006. Quote, Iran seeks to use Syrian territory to attack Israel for its professed goal of destroying Israel. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said, Israel holds Iran and its Syrian host responsible for today's aggression. We will continue to do whatever is necessary to protect our sovereignty and our security. Iran denied Israel's shooting down of a drone, with Foreign Minister spokesman Bahram Ghassem calling the attack ridiculous, while the Joint Operations Room for the Syrian military and its allies insisted that the drone had not violated Israeli airspace and was on a regular mission gathering intelligence on Islamic State militants. So there's been a lot of Israeli strikes into Syria. It looks like tensions there are rising up. Both sides, say that the other side is responsible for the increasing tensions, and it's not good because if fighting gets involved there between Israel and everyone else, we're going to have to come in there and fight, and I don't want to do that.
Yeah, I don't want to do that either, and frankly, I hate to say it, but to me, it seems like Israel's the one that's being the aggressor here. I mean, that seems kind of clear to me, at least.
Well, the thing is, they scrambled these F-16 jets to take out this Iranian drone. But have you ever even seen an instance where drones were taken out by jets? That's
Never.
Not a thing that happens.
Yeah, I've never seen that.
Yeah, and this is something that's happened for months now. We've been talking about instances where Israel just fires strikes into Syria or, bombs things in Damascus. They just feel that it's okay to do these things, when Israel should mind its own business and stay out of goddamn Syria for for what's good for all of us involved.
And then Netanyahu has the nerve to go out there and say that this is all Iran's fault, and we're going to hold Iran responsible for today's aggression. Who was the one who fired the first gun? That was Israel shooting down an Iranian drone. That was not the Iranian drone shooting anything at the F-16s. At least, not the first shot.
Yeah.
Whoever's responsible for the aggression is whoever is the first to aggress. And that was clearly Israel in this case. So, Netanyahu's lying there, what he's saying.
Yeah. We're not a huge fan of Israel and what they do. And this is an instance of stuff they do that we don't like.
No,
so let's go on
to
the next story that is in regard to Israel as well. So Israel is building a new border wall with Lebanon. The command of the Northern Military District of Israel has begun construction of a concrete wall on the border with Lebanon. The wall is being built on Israeli-held territory and will stretch from the Mediterranean Sea in the west to the area around Mount Hermon in the east. Israel first began the construction of a concrete wall along its border with Lebanon in 1948 and still creates lines of defense around Israeli settlements. Israel considers its system of using barrier structures to thwart Palestinian militants, which it considers one of the most effective measures of combating terror. The nation prefers to call these barriers safety fences.
We should be calling our border wall a safety fence.
Yeah. But, they always say, oh, walls don't work or whatever. Why are they building more walls in Israel if they don't work?
I was going to say, the Israel wall had 100% effectiveness at one point here recently. It was a month long or a quarter long period where not one person got through it.
Yeah, you're talking about the wall that they have on the Sinai Peninsula with Egypt.
Correct, yes.
They also have a wall, the West Barrier Bank, on the West Bank there, where, they talk about the terrorist attacks they used to have. They saw something like a 95 to 97% decline in, bombings, suicide bombings because of the wall being built. So, the wall's effective. They're building more walls, and why don't we have a wall? I don't know.
But I guess we can go
Let's move on to the next story. Yeah. American tanks in the hands of Iranian militants. According to a Pentagon Inspector General audit of the mission to crush ISIS, 9 M1 Abrams tanks have ended up in the hands of Iranian militias. A spokesman for the company that makes the tanks, General Dynamics, told Al Ghahad Press in January that it would be packing its bags and leaving maintenance stations in Iraq since that country had violated the terms of the agreement and lent the tanks to the Iran-backed groups. The contract only authorized the Iraqi army to use the vehicles themselves. The State Department, however, would not confirm the General Dynamics representative statements about withdrawing maintenance crews due to the contract violation, telling Kurdistan 12, quote, "The Abrams maintenance program for the Iraqi security force is still currently active, and there is no plans to discontinue it in the future. If General Dynamics refuses to do the work, the U.S. can likely draw on a vast quantity of contractors to pick up the slack."
So
we spend all this money on, the military. We just give them more money, like we did with this new budget thing. And like we saw with the Pentagon, they lost all that money. They couldn't account for it. Now here's an instance where American tanks just end up in the hands of Iranian militias because they don't watch stuff well.
It's like, how does that happen?
And I don't have an extremely favorable view of Iranian militias. I don't want to fight Iran or anything, but I don't want them to have our weapons. It's kind of simple as that.
Yeah. Let's move on to the last Middle Eastern story here. We're almost done with the show.
Yeah. Mattis admits no evidence of Assad using gas. The U.S. has no evidence to confirm reports from aid groups and others that the Syrian government has used the deadly chemical sarin on its citizens. Defense Secretary Jim Mattis said Friday, quote, "We have other reports from the battlefield from people who claim it's been used," Mattis told reporters at the Pentagon. Quote, "We do not have evidence of it." He said he was not rebutting the reports. Quote, "We're looking for evidence of it, since clearly we are dealing with the Assad regime that has used denial and deceit to hide their outlaw actions." Mattis said Syrian President Bashar al-Assad denies his government has used chemical weapons. Mattis says it is clear that Assad's government has weaponized and used chlorine gas in the Syrian civil war.
And it's interesting because the whole Assad gassing his people is what we used as the excuse to launch that first Syria strike, which granted, the Syria strike did pull well among Americans, and it ended up being more of a show of force than anything else. But the fact that we had to respond to that after all this time, we knew that they were lying when they said that Assad gassed his own people. And now Mattis is admitting that, we have no evidence to prove that ever even happened at all. So it's like...
We're willing to fire cruise missiles into the territory of a sovereign nation on evidence that we don't have. It's insane.
It is insane.
Not the basis of smart politicking.
I wish that the U.S. would be a little more pro-Assad, but at least we're admitting that maybe we were wrong in one regard.
Yeah. Let's go on to the Americas now. I got the first story,
and then I'll do the last one.
Out. Yeah. U.S. considering Venezuela oil embargo. U.S. Secretary of State Rex Tillerson said on Sunday that the United States is considering the possibility of imposing sanctions on sales of oil from Venezuela. Quote, "One additional step can be taken to increase the pressure on Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro's regime to return to the constitutional process, obviously sanctioning oil, or in fact prohibiting the oil to be sold in the United States, is something we can consider," Tillerson told a press conference in Argentina, adding that U.S. restrictions may contain products as well. So, we've been talking for many months about the issues in Venezuela and how it's pretty much a complete dictatorship at this point. So we're looking to put sanctions potentially on Venezuela on, their biggest industry, oil. So hopefully through economic sanction, it will force them to stop the madness.
Something tells me that's probably not going to happen, though.
I don't believe so either.
But anyways, I digress. I guess we can go down to our very last story here, can't we?
Yeah.
So the very last story we have here is something that you probably saw if you're listening to this during the week, and that's Justin Trudeau, the Prime Minister of Canada, or Justin from Canada, as he's been referred to, interrupted a woman to do a little mansplaining to her. So this happened during a town hall at McEwen University in Edmonton, and this happened on Thursday, where there was a group that was asking him a question, and the group was part of the religious group World Mission Society Church of God, and there was a girl that was there asking questions about different things in the government of Canada there. And she said, quote, "We came here today to ask you to also look into the policies that religious charitable organizations have in our legislators so that it can be changed, because maternal love is the love that's going to change the future of mankind." And at that point, Trudeau interrupts her and says, "We like to say peoplekind, not necessarily mankind, because it's more inclusive." And then this is one of the times where the audience broke into applause at that point. They actually did. It's insane. I mean, like,
Yeah.
the level of cognitive dissonance here. They'll be like, "Oh, it's not mankind. It's going to be peoplekind." Like, I honestly don't even know what to say besides, like, Jesus Christ.
Even the word man incenses these people because it's exclusionary, quote unquote.
And have you noticed that, I mean, we've said this on the show, so this is no surprise to you, and if you're listening to the show, you probably understand this as well. The left literally exists for nothing more than to destroy everything that society has built. They do not wish to create anything. They literally wish to destroy. And by this, I'm referring more towards, like, social functions and stuff. Well, we got to change mankind to peoplekind. Does that mean that Neil Armstrong's favorite quote is now hate speech?
Yeah.
I don't know.
And, you know, one of Trudeau's top aides said that if you laughed at his statement of peoplekind, you're a Nazi.
Exactly.
So I guess most people are Nazis now.
Yeah, I like there's one quote here from a person who I don't like, but he has a good quote. So little Ben Shapiro over there said, Justin Trudeau is what would happen if the song Imagine took human form and then ate a Tide Pod. So I think that's a pretty good quote. Yeah, if you took that into Neil Armstrong's quote, you'd say, "One small step for people, one giant leap for peoplekind." So it's like, I don't know.
But yeah, funny stuff out of Canada land.
But you know,
yeah, that's the show for this week.
Hopefully it sounded pretty good. At least the Skype call held up this entire time, so that's some good news. Thank you, Enzo, for doing the show. We're only about 2 hours 20 minutes or so it didn't last very long, thankfully. And this was a week that had a lot of news. Hopefully next week will be a short week as well. I mean, I certainly hope so. And I don't know. Do you have anything else that you want to say before we end the show here?
No, just I'm glad that I'm still able to do the show on my one day off from campaigning out here in Plano, and to continue, as I said, to be campaigning out here for Philip Huffines for Texas Senate until March 6th. Hopefully, I'm looking to interview Philip Huffines at one point for the show. I met him once before, just briefly. He's like the fourth richest guy in Texas.
Wow.
Hopefully he wins. There's a good chance of him winning. But yeah, that's what I'm up to.
Sounds pretty good.
But yeah.
I guess the last thing I would say before we end the show is, like I said, please go back and look at our YouTube channel and look at the video that we posted about the Texas primaries if you live in Texas. And if you don't live in Texas and you live in another state, your state is coming. Like I said, we plan to release those episodes roughly 1 month prior to each state's primary. So, we released this one. I released it February 9th because the Texas primary is March 6th. So, it's about a month prior-ish. And so in a couple weeks' time, we'll be coming out with Illinois, Puerto Rico, and then as states go on from there. So if you are a person who wants to be an informed voter, make sure you keep an eye out for that, and you can learn a lot of things. So other than that, I don't really have anything more that I need to say.
Yeah, I have nothing else. So with that, thank you for listening to another episode of Trump Public Radio, and have a good one.
Goodbye, everybody.